Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Better Love and Sex. I am your host, Davy Ward, and I want to thank you for tuning in and joining us this evening while we have another tantalizing conversation about how we all can begin creating more love and better sex in our lives. I firmly believe that our sexuality plays a huge part in our satisfaction in life, in every area of our lives. And unfortunately, we live in a culture and a society where our sexuality kind of gets shoved to the wayside. And for many people can lie dormant, and it's a creative source of energy that goes untapped for many people, and that's actually one of the things we're going to be talking about this evening with our guests. So that brings us to our lovely guest this evening, Baljit, and we are going to be talking about sex and co-creative power. And I'm actually curious about this because Baljit is a friend of mine. She's been a friend of mine for a few years, and I've actually worked with her, but I haven't ever heard her explain what this co-creative power is. So I'm very, very curious to learn more about that this evening. But I'm going to share a little bit about Baljit with you this evening. Baljit, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me here, Davy.
It is an absolute pleasure. So I'm going to share Baljit's bio that she was kind enough to send me. So Baljit is the founder of Lotus Destiny TM. And put that TM there. I love that. And creator of the Lotus Destiny Star Activation system, another TM. Those are fabulous. And she's an intuitive soul coach, Akashic Records consult, and teacher who powerfully connects you to your soul's purpose, your creative gifts and talents, so you can bring your dreams into reality. And I want to say, I have worked with Baljit, and I want to say that statement is absolutely 100% true. As personal growth people, we all have blind spots. And what I have loved so much about working with Baljit is that she points directly to the thing that's blocking me that I would never in a million years have guessed. Like, I would never have figured it out for myself. But she sees it from this overview, and she's able to put her finger directly on it and pinpoint it and point it out so that I can begin recognizing how that pattern is showing up in other areas of my life. And not only does she show me, but she also helps clear it. She helps clear that obstacle out of the way so that my personal experience has been, once that obstacle begins clearing, it opens up this pathway to so much, to me actually living my dreams and fulfilling my destiny. So she actually, you get what you pay for.
Thank God.
She actually does what she says she's going to do, and it works.
Sometimes I never know. I just, everyone just finishes their stuff. They're like, okay, bye.
Thanks so much, bye. No, Baljit. So I don't know if I ever shared with you, but what I love with your work is that I get so much bang for my buck, so to speak, in that it's not just that one session. It's like, I see this pattern like for weeks and weeks and weeks, and it's this amazing healing process. I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing. And once you point it out, that's part of how the clearing process begins. It's just being able to recognize where it's showing up in my life initiates and catalyzes the healing process. So thank you so much for your gifts.
You are most welcome. And, I'd have to say likewise about you. You really brought in a lot of stuff for me. And, really, I think my biggest thing about you was to bring things into practicality with Tantra. And I had all the theory, but I wanted more of the practicality that was used at its highest integrity. And, you really brought that in for me. So when you asked me to be on your show, I was like, whoa, this is going to be fun co-creation with you. And I'll talk about the co-creative power.
So what is this co-creative power? Let us in. What's the scoop?
So co-creative power, when we think about co-creation, we each have this female energy and this masculine energy inside of us, right? And the way that we refer our masculine and feminine energy, as a child, we kind of look at our mom and dads, right? We're like, oh, this is what you do if you're a female, and this is what you do if you're a male. What happens is that subconsciously we start to take up programming from our mom and our dad, society, media, basically what it means to be male or female, and then we start acting it out in our reality. when you're in that energy of empowerment, you can co-create with the universe, because the universe kind of acts as more of like a masculine energy and Mother Earth as female. So when you have a strong intuition and you want to bring forth something, you're then able to call in support from the universe and create, like something just manifest. But if you have blocks, meaning you're blocking the universe from supporting you, and you're blocking your own intuition, which is your own feminine energy, so blocking the masculine, blocking the feminine, there's no co-creation. So co-creative power is about you learning how to step into your power, which means stepping into your own knowingness, your intuitive power, knowing like, yes, this is who I am. This is what I've been made up and come here to do. This is my mission. And I'm going to ask the universe to co-create with me. Or, you know, for you and I, Davey, we're on this radio show. We're co-creating right now because you and I set our intentions before the call. So you're making this conscious choice to co-create. And so through that, there's magic. It doesn't even need to be, I want to say sexual, right? It can just be through this energy of being with someone and co-creating with that person, whether you're just talking with them, doing an interview, out dancing, whatever it is, that's the co-creative power.
So but it's being conscious and aware. It's not just, shuffling through life. It's being awake.
Very awake. So you're not being a subconscious co-creator, you're being a conscious co-creator. And being a conscious co-creator, you're very aware about how you're showing up in life. You're aware about your interactions with others. And through that process, that's how the magic happens. There's like this alchemical reaction that just flourishes, and you're like, whoa, what was that? So something happens in that space when you're conscious and you're using that creative energy.
It sounds like play.
It's total play.
Yes. We're playing. We're playing and having this experience in life.
And our parents didn't teach us how to play. They just taught us that play is just a hobby.
Yes.
So that's where it stifles our growth and, can cause a lot of conflict, with us receiving money, us receiving support and believing that we need to work a 9-to-5 job, and, the list goes on. But when you're in that energy of play, and you incorporate that into your business, then, what you co-create is beyond, like you're in alignment.
Because it's from joy. It's coming from a place of joy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So how does this co-creative energy relate to our sexuality?
Well, let me tell you.
Fill me in.
When you are co-creating, so when you're showing up consciously, let's just say, I was making love to someone. If I'm showing up consciously with that person, being intimate, and my intentions are very conscious, so I'm really connecting with them. And what happens is that your sexual energy is this life force. It's this powerful, universal life force. I always talk about society and programming because it plays a huge role in how we show up in life. And so when we look at media and, what they've taught in high school, I mean, no one really taught us in high school that, or, when we had sex education, it was like, okay, kids, well, your sexual energy is this universal life force that is very important for your creativity and also for lovemaking. No, they just gave you a condom and here's some tampons and you're good to go. They didn't teach us how profound and powerful sexual energy is. So when you're making love to someone, right? When you're intimate and you have this lack of awareness of understanding what the sexual energy is all about, and you're just having a subconscious creation with the person, what happens is that ancestral programming or just programming can get kicked up because you're focusing on the 3 lower chakras, You know, and I remember you shared this too, when you were, teaching the 5 elements as well, right? And when the focus is not up on the 3 upper chakras and circulating and around, what happens is that programming gets kicked up and then you can't really co-create from that space. So what happens is that sexual energy inverts back and it can go into depression. It can go into big healing crisis. Lots of emotions get kicked up. The programming kicks up. So the main programming for women, you know, is meeting a guy on a horse, the stallion, and getting married and having a white picket fence and a home, right? So, or the fairy tale.
Absolutely. Prince Charming and his white horse is he's gonna rescue us, and we're gonna live happily ever after. And then, you know, 2 kids and 2 years down the road, we're like, what the heck happened? I got gypped.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's an illusion. And so when you're using your sexual energy consciously, that illusion dissipates and you're being this conscious co-creator with this other person. I've had experiences where, you know, I immediately attracted a client the next day or something because I was just so in that energy of play and connecting that immediately magic started to happen everywhere. Like there was more flow and I wasn't leaking my energy. So this co-creation is you're building up your universal life force inside of you. And then that energy circulates on both parts, you know, you and your partner. And then the sexual energy turns into something else.
So it sounds like you're talking about a mind, body, and spirit connection. So most people are just doing genital rubbing, right? If you're having
rub-a-dub-dub.
Exactly. If you're having unconscious sex, then it's just, you know, genital rubbing. But it's when we integrate the heart. So when we have this emotional love, you know, and everybody I've ever talked to agrees that when we make love, when you have sex where your heart is truly connected, it's a profoundly more fulfilling experience. And then when we get our spirits connected, so we're using it's holistic sex. You're talking about holistic sex.
Absolutely. It's found. Oh, yeah.
That's the way I like it.
It's so easy, and you already know this, but it's actually deferring your power to others. So when I mean deferring your power, it means when, you know, and this can just be in regular relationships, you know, friendships and whatnot, is that when you're always giving your power away, or I like to say leaking your energy, and you're just, you're doing it for the sake of quote unquote being loved and accepted, that fear of being rejected. What happens is that when you are being intimate with someone, you're having sex with someone from that space, you end up leaking energy. So you're having sex through fear versus having empowered sex. And from that place, it's going to be hard to co-create. So what happens is, you can procreate and have a child, or because that programming gets kicked up, or the ancestral programming or other programming, pent-up energy magnifies, because through the co-creation process is that, you know, sex is very, very healing. And when you're in your power and you're really connected with someone and you're from that space of feeling confident and just really letting go and just allowing yourself to enjoy the ride, really allowing yourself to be with this person, you're in that co-creative space. But the minute that you're kind of doing things out for the sake of pleasing your man or woman, just so that they can get off or whatever, then it goes back into the non-co-creative place. So what happens is that, you know, your sexual energy is so powerful. And if you're having sex from a place of disempowerment, you know, let's just give an example of, you know, a girl goes to a bar, she meets a guy, they're drunk and they go home together, but it's just all subconscious, you know, rub-a-dub-dub.
Genital rubbing,
wham bam, thank you, ma'am. What happens is that the next day And, you know, a woman can, or a guy, depending on, you know, who is the dominant person, but will feel drained. Like energetic will feel drained, maybe discombobulated, and it takes him a day to regenerate, right? Especially if a guy ejaculates, because he releases his semen, which, you know, has all that universal life force in it. But for women too, when they defer their power, whether they were just too high or drunk, or, you know, they're just unaware with their intentions, coming into it, the programming gets kicked up, and it can drain their energy, and it can also cause leakage with support. When we think about the root chakra, that's all about support. And if you're approaching your relationships, your intimacy from a place of disempowerment, you're going to feel more insecure, less supportive. You're going to be in survival mode most of the time. So then it creates even more weird dynamics in relationships and intimate relationships. And then also in your business, if you have a business, even in your finances, you'll notice that money's just leaking everywhere as well, because money is a form of masculine energy.
So what about for people that are in a long-term relationship and they're having non-co-creative sexual connection? What would that look like?
Let me tell you, Davey. Well, it gets to the point where it becomes very numbing. So let's just say Jill marries John, white picket fence, you know. The more they have sex, the more stuff is going to get kicked up. The more that they don't want to look at the truth and heal, the more that they're going to distract themselves. So Jill then puts more of her focus on the kids, doesn't really focus more on her husband. John decides to, you know, watch more porn, or is addicted to playing video games or watching sports. And so then there's the separation. There's no co-creation. It just becomes very stale. And I've seen this a lot in relationships. And as they keep having sex, it can also cause weight gain, right? So if women especially are taking on energy of a guy, and he's not being conscious with what he's putting inside of you, same with women and men as well, then if a woman's not able to process that energy, she ends up taking on those emotions, and then because she can't face the truth, she'll end up eating more sweets, have cravings and whatnot, and gain more weight as well. So they'll do as much as they can to numb everything, but it's because they haven't figured out, because sex is so powerful. It's a strong life force, but they haven't pinpointed that that's the key thing that shifts everything.
Absolutely. So they numb themselves out and continue to disconnect and not realizing that it's that. But it sounds like they keep perpetuating the issue by continuing to have the disconnected kind of sex, and that just makes it worse.
Yeah.
So to recap, what are the symptoms of knowing that you are not in a co-creative power place when it comes to your sexual energy? What things are going to show up in our lives?
You'll feel exhausted. You'll feel drained, like especially after sex. If you're feeling drained after sex or just exhausted, and you notice you're not feeling like yourself, you need to look at your connection with your partner or who you had sex with, because it came from a place of disempowerment versus the co-creative process. You may notice that you're gaining more weight, so that also means that you're not allowing yourself to process your own energy, your own emotions, and listen to your emotions, right? Because when you have sex, it's very healing. It's going to bring up stuff as well. So if you're not wanting to look at that, and you're just ignoring what's there, you're also leaking your energy as well. Another thing too is that after sex too, if you start to feel anxious, or you're kind of feeling like really empty or just like you want to attach to someone, it's also a sign that you're not in the co-creative process as well. So it's stuff that's getting kicked up for you.
So pretty much notice how you feel emotionally and physically directly after sex, and then probably like in the ensuing days as well. Notice if you feel energy drained, notice your emotional state, and notice if you have a tendency to want to stuff your emotions. Yeah.
Sometimes what happens is that you may have sex with someone and you're just on a complete high for a day and you're like, woohoo! But then 2 days later, you start to feel stuff coming up. So that's more of the healing process. So that's still very good to notice those emotions and stuff. But if you're always feeling drained after having sex, like energetically, and you're resisting the partner, then you're kind of like, it's almost like your cup's full and you don't really want them inside you, or that's a sign.
Red flag.
Your cup is full. It's letting you know something's toxic, and you're like, oh,
nope, don't come in. No entry here.
Back off, get your own sandwich, got to do your own thing. So.
Right on. So it sounds kind of like you're talking, it's similar to sexual vampirism. So can you describe that a little bit more?
Okay. Absolutely. So sexual vampirism is, if you look at vampires, right? Vampires suck blood, right? Blood has life. Energy. It's life force. Vampirism, energy vampirism, happens a lot in relationships when people don't know how to tap into their power. If they're not in their power of knowing who they are, they don't feel confident about themselves, they will tend to seek energy elsewheres instead of inside, right? Yes, so they seek it outwards. So a common thing for men is that they will, if they don't feel good about themselves, they seek approval from like dating a ton of women. I've seen it so many times. Women, if they don't feel good about themselves, they seek energy outside by being quote unquote promiscuous. Right?
Yep.
So they don't know how to harness their sexual energy. So sexual vampirism happens with men and women is when you're having sex with them, that they're actually just wanting your energy, subconsciously or consciously. And what you feel afterwards is usually you feel drained. You may feel sick in the stomach. You just may feel really just like, whoa, what did I just do? Like just a little off. And it's because you leaked your energy and the other person kind of took it and said, okay, thanks, bye. And that's how they feed off of you. And it can be fine. You don't even have to have sex with them. It could be through, we've talked about tantric circles and whatnot, it can happen through that too.
Yeah, it can happen just sitting next to somebody sometimes.
It can happen just sitting next to someone. Yeah.
And it's been so in relationship to sexuality, though, what's been so revolutionary for me is this approach to love making, that love is desiring happiness and pleasure for our partners, right? So sexual pleasure is something that we give. And I think in this culture, there's so much focus on, sex is something we get. Right? I'm going to get my orgasm, or I'm going to get off, or I'm going to get my nut, or I'm going to, get my whatever. It's about taking energy or getting something from the person, as opposed to we're coming together to share a gift and give each other a gift. And like orgasm is so not the goal. It's like we're just going to play in this space and give each other pleasure and see what happens.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It was so funny because earlier today I was thinking, just in general, because I had a client and I was just thinking to myself afterwards, I'm like, wow, society have taught, men and women to depend on each other so much in the bedroom to expect that they're, for men, sometimes they face insecurities because they believe that they're responsible for a woman's orgasm.
Exactly. Those poor guys.
And I'm like, oh, you guys, stop it. Don't stop it.
Yeah.
Because and then they try to prove themselves, and then the pattern gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And it just goes in circles. And then the woman believes that, the orgasm comes from the man performing and whatnot. But really, people, the orgasm has to do with how clear you are energetically within yourself. And when you really learn how to tap into that all-knowing power, you're healing your woundings and all that stuff, you are way more open, you're juicier, you are way more connected. And then when you meet someone who is like-minded vibrationally, right? This is where the co-creation happens, because they get you and they know themselves so well that this is where all the juiciness happens. The life force just, the magic happens right there. But if you're expecting, the minute you expect that person to get you off and whatnot, it kind of goes back into disempowerment, I want to say.
That's exactly what you read my mind.
We are so co-creating, Davey. Let me tell you, girl.
And we're not even having sex. How
I know, it's so awesome.
We're having some radio love. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly. It's such a because I know I used to be in that place. I used to be that, just living out my cultural conditioning. You expect the guy to know how to kiss you, know how to touch you, know how to, exactly how to touch your clitoris in the perfect way. Like, no one gave him a manual. Yeah. How's he? But you just expect. And if he's not doing it right, then you go talk to your girlfriends about, well, it kind of sucked in bed, So, but of course, I'm not going to actually communicate to him, because
exactly.
Good girls don't, right? I'm not going to give him any clue. I'm just going to move my hips and moan real loud. So, it's a horribly disempowering place for both partners. And instead of actually being present and playing this game called sex, which is the game that adults play, it's our favorite game as adults. We're going to play sex. It's a favorite game to play until you have unco-creative sex and it gets numb and whatever. But until that point, it's our favorite game to play, right? And if everybody had their druthers, we would all be playing this fun game of sex. So instead of coming from that disposition, we come from this place of expectation. We're playing roles. I like to call it playing roles. He's playing the role of handsome prince, and we're playing the role of, damsel in distress.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right on. So what can we do about this? What can people? So speaking specifically about sexual vampirism, how if somebody has had this experience of having their energy drained and sucked and feeling, I've had this experience myself. Mm-hmm. Yes. Hit rock bottom. Your life has been sucked.
Yeah, it's not fun.
What the heck do we do? I had my things that I did. Luckily, I had a healer who, brought me back from the dead. But what?
Yeah, that's what happened to me. I hired someone, and what it was is that I hired someone to assist me to heal my own woundings, and sometimes, luckily I could do readings on myself, and I usually go within myself. And I kind of retreat, because I want to harness and call back all my power, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to heal your past wounding and any woundings with why you got to the place of disempowerment in the first place. One of the main reasons for everybody is the fear of being rejected and wanting to be loved and accepted. So if they were raised in an abusive upbringing where they believe that love equals being hit or being sexually abused, then they're going to seek that everywhere. So then what happens is that they're always experiencing conflict because they're like, I want love, I'm getting love, but I'm always getting drained. This doesn't make sense because they've taken on a misconception of what love means. They've taken on a misconception of what it is to really unite with someone. So it's actually healing your wounding of what's causing these energy drainers to come in.
So it's an inside job. So again,
it's total inside.
Yeah, so healing begins in ourselves, and then as we begin to heal our own internal patterns, then what shows up for us externally changes.
Totally shifts. It's like night and day.
Yes, absolutely. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. Baljit, for those of us, those people out there who aren't really, how do we discern? How can we tell if our energy's being drained? And is there something that we can do in the moment to stop that?
Yes, there is. It's, the number one key thing is actually having more awareness about yourself. It's something so simple, but there's so many people out there that, blame other people for their own problems and why they feel drained and, whatever drama is going on to their life. But it is really important to do your own inner work. It really is. And if you are unable to hire someone or whatever, then, take that time out to just like meditate and go within yourself and ask what your woundings are all about, and where it comes from. It does help when you have some sort of assistance. And when I talk about boundaries, I'm not talking about barriers. I always tell people about the difference between barriers and boundaries, because barriers are more like you blocking someone out totally, right? Mm-hmm. Or you leaving your body. So I've dealt with a lot of women, men, but especially women who may have been sexually molested or whatnot, and they spend a lot of time outside of their body versus being in their body. So it's a barrier. And so what happens from that is that it creates more chaos to come in, because you're not owning your physical self, actually being here on this planet. And you're closing people off. You're closing your heart connection, especially with other women too. I've seen this with women and other women together, is when they have barriers, it just blocks them. Boundaries are different. Boundaries are kind of like you're in this 360 bubble, and it's crystal clear, and you've got complete view of everything, but you get to choose who you want in your energy field or not. And it has to come from a place of empowerment. When we operate through relationships based on our woundings versus being empowered, this is where there's lack of discernment. This is where you will leak your energy. It's like you'll have sex with someone and you're like, oh, crap, I shouldn't have done that. And like there's this knowingness, right? Mm-hmm. So I always tell everybody to listen to your gut. Your gut and your emotions, especially your emotions, are the radar to your truth. They're always going to tell you what's off and what's not off. And when you listen to that, that's you discerning yourself. And it's okay to say, you know what, that sounds great, but right now I'm feeling, this is where it's got to be at, having that communication. A lot of women and men, especially women, fear communicating. That communication is a way of creating boundaries and discernment. It goes back to that place of that fear of not being loved and accepted, being rejected, not being supported, and whatever other wounding that they're operating from will cause them to be in a place of disempowerment. But if you're in a space of like, this is my truth, and I've dealt with lots of stuff. I've had my boundaries tested up the yin yang, okay? And I've had to learn what's mine and what's not mine. And I always say to myself, is this my stuff or is this someone else's stuff? Is this my truth or is this someone else's truth? There's the universal truth, but each and every one of us has our own truth. And that's why it's so important to tune in and discern and hear what your truth is and stick with it and be okay with it. Sometimes when you stick with your own truth and your own boundaries, a lot of people may not like it if they're feeding off of you, right? Mm-hmm. Because they get angry when they can't feed off you. They're like, where's my candy? Give me my energy. No!
You took my food.
Yeah. Give it. Defer your power now. And you're like, okay, I guess this person will love me. Oh, no, they didn't. They left. They took your energy and you feel done. So when you discern yourself and you create boundaries, what will happen is those that have been, quote unquote, vampiric with you will drift away because they realize they can't feed off of you, right? So they'll go somewhere else. And then what happens to you vibrationally is that you end up meeting like attracts like, right? So you end up meeting those that are more of a vibrational match, that honor and respect your boundaries, that will make sure and check in if everything's okay, and will ask you before acting on certain things.
Yes.
So it does have to do with you doing your own inner work and understanding you as a human being on this planet, you on a personal level, and understanding and sticking to your truth. A lot of people have a lot of blocks with not trusting their own truth, because as children, we're so intuitive, but most of us have been programmed to not really tap into our intuition, but just be heady, in our mind. So when you ignore that intuition for so long, there's a lack of trust of understanding your intuitive abilities and knowing that that's your main navigation to receiving support.
Absolutely. And so it's honoring, it's being present in the body. I'm hearing, like, being present and being connected to the body. And I know for me in the past, my past lives in this life, I had a tendency, because I was disconnected from my body, I had a tendency to override that intuitive knowing and listen to my head instead of listening to the truth that my body was telling me, especially when it came to sexuality, because I didn't have those boundaries. So instead of honoring my body and honoring the no, because I'm the person that I was the person that you're totally describing. Because of that need for love and acceptance, I would override that intuitive awareness and get myself in really shitty situations.
Yeah, it's not fun. And I love the work that you do too. Another thing to do is learning how to be grounded in your body. There's so much stuff going on, right? It's so easy for us to kind of check out. And when you check out of your body, you have no sense of boundaries and awareness. So there's one thing I remember meeting you in person. I was like, damn, she is grounded. Because the work that you do too is you're the sacred erotic dance, right? You're learning what's being hidden in the sacral area and other parts of your body. But, even yoga or just going for a walk. I always love to walk to Stanley Park. I live in Vancouver, BC, but the trees, I'm a bit of a tree hugger. I don't actually hug the trees, but I say hello and I'm like, hey, it grounds me. It just makes me feel happy, because when you're sleeping, especially if you're a light worker, you're always, flying around doing so many things. And when you wake up, it's very important to ground. So taking a nice shower and just grounding it makes you very present and aware of you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that we are fully, that's the meaning behind the term embodied, so that we are fully in the body, fully embodying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So how you work with people and you help them to heal. So how do you go about that? What is it that you do?
Okay, so I do readings through the Akashic Records, and the Akashic Record is the record of your soul. It records every word, thought, action, event. And by accessing this book of life, is what you want to call it, we're able to identify, the blind spots of whatever's in the way of you creating a healthy relationship with men, women, money, your own business if you have one, discovering what your soul purpose is, basically anything. I've dealt with people who don't feel like they actually belong here. They feel like a complete alien. They don't understand what their purpose is. To some who've attracted some really toxic relationships and they don't know how to get out of it, or understand how to create boundaries and why they're doing what they're doing. So in the Akashic Records, you learn why on a conscious level, what's happening and what your blind spots are, and heal from it. And through that, it's a complete quantum shift. So it's one of the deepest healing tools that are out there.
So, and I have to say from personal experience, blind spot, like it really is a blind spot.
Yeah, it is.
It's not something that you can see for yourself,
but it's something so simple, and you're like, oh my, how did I not see that? Yeah.
That's exactly, but it's so right on and it's so perfect. And it's almost like just by seeing it, the shift begins. But then you actually do the clearing work. Where you do the clearing work in the Akashic Records, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you actually clear it, so it's poof, gone.
Yeah, like, and it all depends on each soul, right? Everybody clears with whatever their soul is ready to clear, whether it's 50, whether it's 80 or 100%, because every soul is here for a purpose and a different journey, right? And every soul has free will with how much they're wanting to heal. So that's what I'm talking about, empowerment. It's really learning how to take personal responsibility with how you're showing up and dealing with your own stuff, because that's what's going to make you way more connected and make the sex more powerful when you're intimate with someone.
So what are some of the results that people have experienced from doing this kind of work?
Lots of stuff. They've now got, they've started up their businesses and like doing what they love to do, with aligning to their soul's purpose, expressing their gifts and talents. They've healed relationships with their loved ones, with money. They've actually now have good sex, like co-creative sex. They actually understand. They know how to co-create and have healthy relationships. That's one of the biggest key things. But it impacts everything. It's a ripple effect. Whatever's going on in the bedroom is going on in the business, and it's going on everywhere else. So I get people to understand how this dynamic shows up everywhere.
Absolutely. That's yay.
Yeah.
Amen, sister.
Amen. Amen.
Hallelujah. So we're sadly we are running out of time. So I would love if you could let our listeners know where they can contact you, and if you have any special offers that you'd like to offer.
Absolutely. So people can go to my website at www.lotusdestiny.com to find more information. If you have any questions or interested in booking a session or longer packages, we can set up a 30-minute free call and it's an information call. Or if you want to do some other stuff, just hit me an email, baljit@lotusdestiny.com.
Awesome. So, and I want to say, as I said in the beginning, that I've just really benefited so much from our friendship, but also professionally from the work that you've done with me. So I highly recommend it if you are in a place in your life where you're coming up against a block and you just don't know what it is, or you're feeling drained, like all the symptoms that she shared this evening that we talked about. You're feeling drained, you're feeling stuck, you're feeling numbed. I really encourage you to take advantage of at least that, half-hour call and connect with Baljit and find out if this is work that can truly benefit you and help you heal and transform and awaken your life, not just your sex life, but every other area of your life. So I want to thank you so much, Baljit. It's been such a pleasure. I've had so much fun talking with you. Yay!
It's so much fun. Yay!
Yay! Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and please join us next week, and we will be talking about more ways you can awaken, heal, and transform your sexuality. Looking forward to it.